Hello, hello, hello. We are making a video. The baby dog and mama together forever. And I have a bunch of stuff on my mind that I need to talk about in this video. So, about ethics and justice, the justice system. The justice system we have right now is not working. Okay. It is a backwards justice system that we have. So apparently the majority of humans on Earth, they need to face a very regimented justice system in order to act according to the law, according to ethics, according to peace. They need to have a regimented and very authoritarian justice system. Okay, that is what they need. And we don't have that. We don't have that anywhere on Earth. Okay. We have a very liberal justice system in the United States, just to use this example. And it's not working. It's not working at all. I see there is a flower coming out. A rhododendron flower coming out over there, but it's hard to see from here. But one flower is coming out in this color. So once they are blooming, I'm gonna put them on my head and put them onto the jacket to match the jacket. It's gonna be really pretty. Awesome. So I'm grateful for every plant, every animal, the blue sky, the blue God, for any pure water, for any pure environment, for any safe haven for any living being. Okay. And that is what I want to see in the whole world. That's what I want to see in the United States, everywhere, not just on our properties. So where we created, these are basically enclaves of paradise. Wherever we move to, we create a paradise on it. And it's wonderful. We will make it. We will make it happen. At the other house, the smaller house, the smaller garden, when we bought that property, I mean, the housing market was incredibly bad at that time. So there wasn't anything very good. And that house from our friend Eileen was the best. And we needed to move out of the motorhome into a house. So that's when we decided, okay, we're gonna offer her 100,000. She didn't want to, she wanted 150, so we settled in the middle. And so now the property has increased in value. It's close to 300,000 now. And that's what I already knew was going to be unfolding. But when we bought that property in 2007, the back garden was like a trash landfill. It really was. It was incredible. People have buried trash in there. Trash that is like deep underground, that the ground animals, they keep on bringing up Lego blocks. So, I mean, yellow little Lego blocks, they keep on popping up in that back garden. Because the children played there of various people, and they buried their dogs there also. That's where the English laurel grew, because they didn't mow the lawn, where they buried the dogs. And they put a bunch of very beautiful petrified wood and everything, rocks there, for the dogs. So I had the rocks here for a while, but then later on I decided, no, I'm gonna put them back there because these rocks were meant as gravestones for those dogs. I realized that later on. So I put them back under the English laurel for those dogs that have been buried there. And obviously we didn't dig into that. And the English laurel grew. The English laurel was just like 3 feet tall at that time, right there around those rocks. But it had grown over the rocks, so I didn't really see them. So it was about 3 or 4 feet tall, that brush. Not very wide. It was maybe, the brush was like 3 feet wide only. So it was a little brush, but it had grown over these rocks, so that's why I didn't see them in the beginning. I saw them later on when I looked underneath the English laurel, when the English laurel branches got tall and thick and grew past these rocks. Then I was able to look into it, and I saw all of these rocks there. And I thought, oh, those are amazing rocks. And later on I realized they did that as a burial site. But the rest of that garden was like a complete dump, like a garbage dump. And looked like I don't know if they used pesticides or they just cut everything down, and the hedge around the outer part of the property, like behind the fence, that was really low. That was like 3 feet tall and kind of not very well grown out. And there was also I implanted a rose there, which then got overpowered by the other plants, by the ivy, and that probably made the rose not live very well. I don't know if the rose is still alive. But all of that grew, and that's more important to me than just individual plants that are delicate. I need to have a real lush vegetation around the property. I need to have 10 feet tall, lush hedge plants growing around our property. That's what makes me feel good. That's what makes me feel safe. That's what makes me feel like this is a paradise. Okay, so that's how I do it with all hedge plants. I cut them into cubic shapes, and I let them get 10 or more feet tall. The English laurel is now probably 12 or 13 feet tall. I can't even reach up there, so it has to grow into a canopy, but I cut it into the cubic shape as far as I can reach with the cutters. And that looks good. That looks very, very good. That's very gorgeous. And that's how the old English aristocrats have always kept their gardens, in very neat, very, very straight, trimmed hedges, tall hedges, even maze gardens they had that are absolutely gorgeous. So obviously you need a lot of land to create a hedge maze garden. So absolutely beautiful. And then have individual rose hedges. That's what I call a paradise. Tom Ford, for example, has a large garden. He can afford it. Somewhere in the outskirts of LA, he and his partner, they bought this really, really large property, and they have every kind of rose you can imagine, and different species of roses that grow in hedges. and they're wonderfully trimmed. And every year they have these gigantic rose flowers that are very, very amazing smelling. And he probably goes out there with a cup of tea and he sits there on his park bench and he looks into his own paradise that he and his partner created. And he smells the roses, and I can just imagine how amazing that must be. I fantasized of applying as a gardener for Tom Ford. And I'd be worshipping his feet. I mean, I'd be kissing his feet. This man is just so incredible. He's a good, kind-hearted person, multi-talented person, former film director, writer, incredibly romantic, aristocratic person, and most of all, an incredible couturier fashion designer, high fashion, haute couture fashion designer, and also has cosmetic line and perfumes that are absolutely outstanding. So, and I would love to help with all of that, with all of these things. That would be an incredible experience to be friends with someone like that, or be able to work there and once in a while watch him work or talk to him about his work and share my own thoughts on perfumes, and all of his perfumes, even the women perfumes, they have an edginess. They have an aristocratic edge. They have something very refined. They have something intellectual, I would even say. They have something masculine attached to it. And well, that doesn't come as a surprise, because obviously he likes men better than women. So if he makes women's perfumes, they always have a little bit of an androgynous touch in it, a little masculine flair in it. Cafe Rose, for example, So how can anyone compare rose with coffee? I would never get the idea even to do this. But I ordered those in sample forms from a perfume store that makes imitation perfume oils. So I can't afford to buy all of these perfumes that are $100 to $500 each, right? There's no way I can. If I want to smell all of them, just to smell them, order Cafe Rose and pay $300 for a 16-ounce bottle, and then it has alcohol in it, and I don't want alcohol on my skin, so I got the little ones for like $8 from Quality Fragrance Oils, and they're very, very good, and I think they're probably very, very accurate. Seems like it. My intuition's telling me that, because I don't have the comparison actually. But I can tell, like Cafe Rose, or for example, the Orchid perfumes that he has for women, they all have a little bit of a masculine edge on it, and they smell good, really good. But it is not my personal take on perfumes. It's not my personal wish and style that I would create, obviously, and there's nothing wrong with that. So I don't disagree with him on it. I just would make my own perfumes like I would make them smell like my grandmother's lipsticks. So I would make them smell like my grandmother's ultra thick and powdery and heavy old woman's perfume. That's how I would make perfume. Like Marie Antoinette perfumes, with... I wouldn't even use that Chypre, or I wouldn't, because Chypre is like, it's some kind of, it's an isolate from a cedar. I like cedar, but as a tea and as an herb, but not as a perfume, because cedar is a very masculine scent, for example. So I don't know if I would ever get into making masculine scents for men, but I wouldn't rule it out that I might make it. But then they would have an edge of femininity on it that they probably wouldn't like. So, but the way I want a man to smell, so is probably kind of like a bit of a misunderstanding of a kind of rift between that actual masculine, ultra-masculine man that I'm attracted to and my own perfume taste. So I'm probably, I used to cut my ex-boyfriend's hair, Norbert. And I cut a guy's hair in LA too. So someone from the center, and he kind of seemed to like it, which I'm very surprised about. But my ex-boyfriend Norbert in Germany, he didn't complain, but he all of a sudden he got a lot of male attention after I cut his hair. So because I basically cut his hair the way I cut my own hair, like kind of like the Teds or something, like the Doors or whatever. The way they were, the way people had their hair during the late 50s or something, so that when they just started to become hippies, with bangs and the hair over the ears, but then not too long, just until here, kind of like a puppet, sort of, or almost. They look like a little bit like a puppet. And I like that, but I'm letting my hair grow longer now in the back. So, because you can do more things with it. You can do braids, you can do pigtails, and I can make this look more elegant if I want to, or sexy, and so I'm experimenting with all of that, but I always have to have bangs. That's just something I have to do. So I used to be ashamed of my Frankenstein forehead, which is this is a big ass forehead. Is that? Half of my face is forehead. And big and bulgy. And I'm so grateful for this now, because that saved my life, this big prefrontal cortex. Because I'm unstable psychologically. And can you imagine someone unstable without the prefrontal cortex? They'll get into a lot of trouble. So it's the prefrontal cortex that saved my life. I have moments of instability, particularly in the past, so it's getting a whole lot better. I'm healing. But, and if I didn't have the instability, if I didn't have the anger outburst, I would not be alive anymore. The anger saved my life too, believe it or not. Okay, so, but you don't want to hurt someone, just want to make this very crystal clear. But, I would never hurt an innocent person. But I've had bad thoughts against people that are not innocent. So, if you know what I mean. Okay, so let's not get into the details of this. But my prefrontal cortex protected me, this big Frankenstein cortex that people make fun of. that protected me from ending up in prison the way the people who make fun of my big prefrontal cortex end up in prison. Okay, so I guess they don't have that big Frankenstein forehead. And yeah, if they're not that stable, they have a lot of anger issues. They feel they feel whatever ashamed and stuff like this, and then they feel disrespected by someone dropping a hat. Then yeah, if they don't have that prefrontal cortex, they will snap. They will let their anger out on an innocent person. Maybe even in public, they get arrested, get put in prison. Revolving door. Because they don't have that Frankenstein forehead. That's the truth, what I'm saying. This is politically incorrect. And it's true. Yeah, it is. And I have mixed stuff in my genetics. So I don't see there's nothing wrong with the different races. Okay? Nothing wrong with that. What's wrong is when people act out viciously on innocent beings. That's when it's wrong. Okay? I don't care what race someone is. So that's when it gets wrong. And Dr. Robert Sapolsky would say it's not their choice because they don't have free will. Because they don't have the prefrontal cortex. They don't have the stop sign. They're traumatized, they carry ancestor trauma, it's all kinds of things like this. They never had a proper education, so he will attribute Dr. Sapolsky's extreme liberal, which I am not. I met him once in Germany a long time ago in Göttingen. So when he was young and I was very young, so he's just a few years older than I am. He is like 4 or 5 years older than I am. So I was 25, he was about 30, he was already a professor, and he was already traveling around the planet giving lectures, and he was giving a lecture at a primate center in a blue and white striped t-shirt. I never forget that, with long hair already. And he didn't have gray hair yet at that time. And he didn't even have a beard at that time. So I liked him. I was attracted to him. But we were there with the Rotary Club, and that was a private lecture, actually, for the Rotary Club. And I'm very, very deeply grateful that I had this opportunity to stand right in front of Dr. Sapolsky, a couple of feet away from him. We were all standing in a circle. And rather small lecture audience, and he was talking in English, of course, and I'm grateful that we were all able to understand him so well, because he is so well articulated and he speaks very, very well. The way he speaks very well. He doesn't drawl anything. He speaks like the intellectual and aristocrat that he is. Okay, so, and we back then didn't have the very good English skills, but we were able to understand most of it because we've been to England and stuff, and we've been to English schools like for a month or two here and there, and that kind of stuff. So just the bare basics, and we were able to understand him. Also, when you listen to something that's context related to the situation at hand, okay? So if he's talking about primates, he's talking about the psychology of primates, and they're observing primate populations at the primate center in Göttingen. Then this is a very contextual lecture, even in a language that we're not that good at, okay, or at that time, So once you live in the country, then you will catch up. But when I was 25, I was not that great. When I came to the United States at 26, just a year and a half after that, I had to come with a dictionary, with a little pocket dictionary, and I had to constantly look things up. But that's how you learn, and then I wrote them down into my notebook. And I studied it, and I learned it, I memorized it, and then always context related, particularly at the Primal Center, not the Primate Center, the Primal Training Center in LA, where we studied to become primal therapists. So that was another context-related situation where I was able to learn these things very fast. And that's why I say we need an education reform, because children need to learn things in context relation, not just language, but anything. Anything. Everything should be taught in a context relation. And Jiddu Krishnamurti emphasized that. And that's why he founded the Brockwood Park School in England. And Rudolf Steiner emphasized that this particular situation as well. This is so important that we also learn things with our hands, and that learning things with our hands is very context related as well. So when you learn something, let's say you learn the table of elements in chemistry, you just memorize these numbers, and you don't even know what it is. It's an element, like water, okay, but some other element. I don't know what element, what that's used for. I have no idea what. Then we had like 1 or 2 days where we did some experimentation with acid and alkalinity. My friend Susie was doing that, and it got into her eye, and that was very painful. It's awful. they didn't even have any kind of precautions or kind of safety goggles there. I don't even know. I think the teacher didn't even know what they were doing. But, then we had an idea. It spritzes up like this if you put these two things. But, yeah, that's more context related. But that's not good enough, okay? It should start in the very beginning and all the way through with context relation. There has to be, when they bring up the table of elements and they write these numbers down on the chalkboard or any kind of writing board. Yeah? So a whiteboard with erasable markers, okay? They write these numbers on it. And the children just sit there and they look like, what is that? So numbers, okay, but they don't really know what to do with it. So that's why you have to, in every single lecture, you have to bring context relation into it. You have to make it so that someone can grab onto it. It can be interesting. It can be engaging. It can be interactive. It can just like a donkey bridge when you want to memorize something. That's another context relation. It's a snippet of context relation, a donkey bridge, right? I want to memorize that I have to bring from the other house, I have to bring a sleeping bag on my bedding and stuff like this. In order to not forget, I have to attach a donkey bridge or a monkey bridge to it, and like a bookmark or whatever, a mental bookmark, that so I don't forget it. And so the way I do it is I attach something silly or something artistic onto it. Like I imagine in my head that I will then put the sleeping bag over baby dog and have only his head stick out, and I decorate him with all of that bedding material and with the flower, something like this. Then I will for sure remember to bring it. Okay, it's like a mental note that actually has a root that actually has this context relation snippet on it. So, and that's how education should be. That's how education should always be conducted. I think also that every single lecture should bring art into it. So I think every single lecturer should give a child a Play-Doh, and the teacher should have a Play-Doh, and the teacher should form a coronavirus with that Play-Doh, and then encourage the students to form the coronavirus with that Play-Doh. Believe me, it's going to be so much fun and so engaging and also healing, okay, if you do that. Now, that should get the Teacher of the Year award, someone like that, okay? So someone who loves their kids, someone who really engages with the kids, someone who doesn't compare them among each other, someone who embraces them and holds all of them together in their arms and in their mental arms and in the way they teach and engage, the way they give everyone space also, not go around and call someone out or something, you know. And if someone is unruly, the teacher can say, why are you unruly? Okay, what's going on today? What's happening? Is something going on? Are you suffering from something? Pack it out, okay? And if others laugh, then I say, well, we all have our issues. Let's pack it out. Let's talk about this for 5 minutes and then do a 5-minute meditation. And trust me, the problem will be solved, okay, after that, in a peaceful way. And then you go on with the Play-Doh and with the physical example of how a virus could look like, or how a flagella single cell could look like, or how a neuron shapes itself with the dendrites and the axon and with the soma inside and all of that, okay? The mitochondria, we can even shape an entire mitochondrium with Play-Doh, right? So that is context relation. That is interesting. That's highly interesting. And I guarantee you, if we teach children in every subject like this, they will become scholars, they will become excited, they will become scientists, they will become chemists, biologists, molecular biologists, you name it, okay? So they will become doctors, and they will do their work in a way they will see that other living being, another person, even if they go in and they examine a dead body, they will not make fun of that dead body. They will never make fun of someone who is under anesthesia. They'll not play around and throw their fat on the wall and stuff like this. So these things are happening in the world. Why is this happening? Find out why. Okay, there's a reason for it. Because these people, they don't have a relation to that being that's there on that operating table. And if that person is of another race, then you fill in the blank, okay, what might end up happening to that person that's under anesthesia. Okay. Paul almost died because his anesthesiologist was an absolute complete gay dyke woman, okay, like as dyke and as masculine as a a lesbian can possibly get. There's nothing wrong with lesbian, but there's something very wrong with hating random men or men that are terrified like Paul, and she has no understanding. There's no connection, no understanding. All she hears is, he doesn't trust me. Now I'm gonna show him. So she completely overdosed him, and he almost died. Now, he didn't have a 24-hour surveillance camera on him, and if, how can you even hide something like this when you're in a hospital gown, right? And stripped. So that's pretty difficult. And they don't let anyone in. They wouldn't let me in there with the camera to film the whole thing. Trust me, if I'd been in there with the camera, she would have behaved very, very well and very polite and very decently. Yeah. But there's no one looking over her. That the other assistant doctor that was there, he must have been terrified of that woman. He's terrified of the anesthesiologist in the operation room. I mean, this is not acceptable, okay? That's not acceptable at all. And this is just one out of gazillions of examples that are happening in this country and particularly worldwide when it comes to things that need to be reformed, okay? And then they have also they have done malpractice when they operated on his hernia. Yeah, he had intestinal herniation that was bothering him a whole lot. They put a mesh type of material into it. This mesh type of material, it doesn't even disintegrate. That's another serious flaw, because it can cause an allergic reaction. It can cause septic shock. So because it's a foreign object in the body, and then if that's not done well, then it can completely disform the way the body is shaping itself. Also, it can disfigure things, the wiener and all of that, So malpractice is happening worldwide, and it is horrible. It's absolutely horrific. And we need to learn from this, and we need to do it better. And I would say 99% of all surgeries can be avoided if people had better nutrition, if people had better education, if people had more of a social grid, a network where people don't fall through the grid, where people don't have to enslave themselves in order to not fall through the grid of the social structure or socialized service structure or whatever. And so in the past, when he was a child, it was really bad. The capitalism was really, really bad. It was extreme. They didn't have social structure happening. Wokeism just started at that time, and unbelievable brainwashing happening, and religion being forced on children and all of that. It's unacceptable. It's unacceptable. Don't do that to anyone. The animal testing, having little monkeys that are the Harlow monkey experiments that should have never been even allowed. Because every teenager, every 10-year-old can already figure out what would happen to these monkeys if they are babies and they're not being nursed. by any mother or surrogate mother, if they don't even have a plush animal in there. The animals end up tearing their hair out and throwing their head on the ground. Believe it or not, that happened to me when I was a baby and a child. Okay. There are some children that go into a catatonic shock, that go into causes me shortness of breath to think about this. Some children, some animals go into catatonic shock. They die from immune compromisation, because the immune system depends on the nervous system to be well and to be feeling good and be functioning well. So, and the other children that or monkeys that tear their hair out and bite themselves and throw their head hard on the floor. That's self-destructive behavior out of complete despair. They're cornered into unbelievable despair because they did not get the mother's nurturing. That's how important, that's how vitally important the mother's nurturing is. Okay. Obviously, in the 1800s and 1700s, there were constantly babies dying. They called it sudden infant death syndrome. They had no idea why these babies were dying. I know why the babies were dying. They didn't get the nurturing. They didn't get touch. They didn't get the mother's embrace, and they didn't feel the mother and her heartbeat and smell her and feel her skin and her soft voice and all of that. They didn't feel the security of the mother, knowing the mother is always there protecting them. They didn't have any of this. That's why they died. And sometimes a cat would feel sorry for those children and lie down with them and make them survive, because the cat became the mother. Okay, trust me, this was happening. And once in a while, a cat did know better and lie down on top of the chest of the baby, and then unfortunately suffocated the baby. Okay, so that happened too. A really large cat can weigh, I don't know, maybe even 30 pounds. So, and the baby is, I don't know how much the baby is, 15 pounds or something. A newborn baby can be smothered by a large cat. But the cat just meant well. The cat just wanted to give the child this comfort. Okay. Cats have that instinct of nurturing. All of these things that people seem to not be very, very informed about it. People are tapping in the dark about all of this. Arjanov knew about all of that, so he talked about this in depth. There's a book by Arjanov. Dr. Arthur Janov, okay, PhD psychologist from LA, who wrote numerous books, among them one very, very important book that every single school should have among their school books, and that is called Early Imprints. Okay, what trauma does to living beings. He talks about all of that. Very important. Also, what alcoholism does to a mother who is pregnant, what it does to the embryo and the fetus. Okay, I don't hear Christians talk about that. So they always talk about bad to abort an embryo that is this small, right? But then they don't talk about the alcoholism, what it does, and the stress and being beaten by a violent husband. What that does to that vulnerable living being inside of her womb. Okay? Think about all of this very clearly. If you have a violent partner, that could be boyfriend or anyone you live with or husband, right? Husband means nothing, okay? That doesn't make it suddenly decent. If that's a violent person, do not have a child with that man. Don't do it. Don't do it to your baby. Don't do this, okay? Walk away. Take your animals and get the hell out of there and do it behind his back. Because if you talk this through with him, he will kill you. That's what violent men do. If I can save just one life with my videos, then my videos are worthwhile. And I know they are worthwhile. It's a therapy for me, but it's also something that is pressing inside of me. This is information that is pressing, that this information itself is pressing and wants to be said, wants to be told, wants to be spoken into the public. So I have to do this, just as my artwork wants to be painted or sculpted. I have to obey that. This is very, very important. That's the blue God speaking through me. I know that sounds incredibly... that sounds really, really bloated, right, to say the least. But it's the truth. It's the truth. Okay, we're not used to this. We don't want to hear anyone say anything like this ever. We're also brainwashed against it, and we're also highly suspicious. And we should be suspicious, of course. Be suspicious. And if you're suspicious of me, I welcome that, because put what I'm saying to the test and see for yourself. Then you will know. Okay, so that looks pretty out there. Yes, I have to do the ears today. I have to always I have to wipe the ears out because he has a yeast infection. The doctor said he has a yeast infection. They gave us a toxic, terrible stuff to put into the ears. I never even used it once. I gave it back to them. We got our money back. I said we don't use any of these drugs and stuff. So we do this holistically. Yes, that's what happens when they have a yeast infection. They start itching and it's very uncomfortable. So and then they can even scratch that raw, and then that's even worse for the yeast infection. So what I do is I have to wipe his ears out with either a glass wipe or with a baby wipe. Baby wipe was from Walmart. They're called Parents' Choice. They're very, very good. They have aloe vera in it, and they're all natural. And you wipe the ear out with that really, really thoroughly. And then you can take either a Vicks VapoRub, like a pea size of that, massage that into the ear, also little bit into the ear canal. Women have skinnier little fingers. You can go in, but don't do it rough. Gently massage this in, and also gently, not with long fingernails. Your fingernails have to be really, really short to do that. And you have to massage it into the different crevices in the outer part, so above the ear canal. So there are so many different cartilage formations and crevices and little caves and tunnels, so you can massage it into all of these crevices very gently. They like it. It feels good. and that gives tremendous relief. So, and that helps also against the yeast infection. And then for internal, you cut cedar. This is a cedar over there. I hope it shows. This is a cedar brush, and you cut a branch of cedar, you cut a twig off, and with a pruner, and then you cut the needle leafy part. You cut that all off. Make sure there is no larger twig part in it. So you cut all the leafy, needly. They're not needles. But they're part of the needle tree group, of course. But it's soft and it's like it's kind of spongy type of leafy material, the green part of it. So you cut that off into small, very small pieces, a handful of that, put into the dog food, mix it up, put some cheese sprinkles on it, and they will eat it. And you do that every day. I recommend to do that every day, but do it at least intermittently. Do it for 2 weeks, and then maybe another 2 weeks you give something else like ivy mixed into the dog food. This is ivy is antifungal, and the yeast infection is a fungal infection. That will help. And the cedar is antifungal, anti-carcinogenic, very, very important. Okay. The cedar cures papillomavirus, canine papillomavirus. I researched all of this on the internet. So that will get rid of the genital warts, and he's already been in the hospital for that. He had genital warts that we thought this was something worse. I was already prepared for the worst outcome. It was a nightmare, an absolute nightmare. These genital warts, when they develop from the papillomavirus, they're not just on the outer surface. They root into the flesh, okay? And so this entire wart grows inward also. And then it takes on a form like a tumor almost. But it's not a cancer tumor, it's a papilloma tumor. It's not malignous, or whatever they call it, malign or malignous. It's not malicious. So, but it is malicious enough to grow in and create blood vessels to burst, and then when the wart comes off, then suddenly a bunch of mucus and tissue comes out as well. And we thought this is the end. I mean, it was so bad. So we had to take him to the veterinarian, and they had to operate on him. They had to remove all of this, the papilloma wart material that was also on the inside in the wiener area. So it's awful terrible. But so then most people don't do it. Most people just go, oh yeah, let's just give him the toxic stuff, and then most people don't put their mind into it. And if you give toxic stuff, that just suppresses the immune system, causes even worse things. It causes liver problems, kidney problems. It causes the C word. I don't want to say the word, okay? So don't go there. Don't take that route. Go to a holistic practitioner with your animal. And I'm giving you really good free advice here because I care about your animals. I care about all living beings. That's why I make these videos. So I didn't know about all of this. Then when we came back to have the stitches removed, the other lady, other vet that was removing the stitches, she said she has, but no, don't do that. She said she has don't do it. Don't jump up there. Don't jump on my artwork. No, don't do it. She has an Amstaff too, and he has yeast infection too, and he has papillomavirus warts too. And And she said she doesn't bother with all. She don't. I'm not gonna bother with it. Well, then it can grow into something like that, right? An ingrown wart and all of that. And then you really have problems with it. I didn't want to argue with her right then and there. I just wanted to get the stitches removed safely and get the hell out of there. And I'm never going back to that clinic, by the way, because they sent us out. They have sent us out already 2 times. One was the Papa Dog and 1 time with him. They sent us out. We weren't allowed to be in there with him. We even had to go home, and I prayed to the blue god the whole time. I did telepathy with him, which gave him comfort. I can do telepathy with him. That's amazing. And I talked to him and I said, I'm right here with you in mind. We are not far. We're coming right back. We will pick you up. You're getting through this all safely, and the blue god is protecting you. All of this is important, okay? I know a lot of people won't do it because it goes against their religion or it goes against their whatever scientific belief system, so they're not going to listen. But at least listen to the holistic plant advice that I'm giving here. We didn't know about, so then because of this shock situation, I had to research this. And lo and behold, I find out cedar, which I already had. I bought cedar oil from a store, and I put that on it, and I clipped the cedar leafy part off. I put that in the dog food, and these other pimples things disappeared. They started to heal up, and I have to do this. Really, I have to, now that I'm talking about this, after the video, I have to go out there with my pruner, and I have to clip myself a bunch of cedar branches, cedar twigs, and stuff them into my cloth bag. I have a clean cloth bag just for herbs, and I have to fill that entire cloth bag up and bring that with us when we go back to the other house tomorrow. So I have it there too, and can add that to the dog food there as well, because at the other house we don't have a cedar. So I have to do this. So I have to harvest a lot of the cedar also before we move out, before when we're selling the house. So I'm gonna have to get all the goodies that are growing here and bag them in lots of bags, so we have that to go with us. And it would be very, very nice if I can find a little offshoot, a little sapling of the cedar tree, and bring that along to the other house. And when it itches out, itches. So, and then when we move to the desert, I want to bring all of these saplings with us. We already have way too many at the other house in pots, so I don't even know how we can transport all of that to the desert. But I want to bring them. I have two roses. I have some. I believe one of it is horseradish. Could also be ginger. One of them. So one of them I can't really tell, but it's either horseradish or ginger, because I planted it. I bought the horseradish and ginger on the internet, alive, and for herbal treatment and for nutrition. And then I decided, I'm just gonna take a little piece, and I planted, and it started growing. But ginger grows very, very slowly, but it grew. So, and I'm bringing that also with us to the desert, and we found really good greenhouses now, really large commercial industrial greenhouses now that are reasonably priced. So now we have hope, we can do that. It's going to become manageable with the budget we have. And then we want to grow all of these. We want to grow anything possible in those greenhouses and become completely self-sufficient. Have our own composting system. That's a biodynamic system, and that puts the nutrients back into the soil. And with that, we can create an incredibly paradise and healthy lifestyle. So, and that's the future on Earth, is living in a greenhouse, growing all of your own food, okay? Having a biodynamic, full circle composting lifestyle and plant growing, okay? So with rich, fertile earth that has been decomposed by earthworms. Earthworms are the most important living beings here on Earth because they recycle the dung and the carcasses into fertile earth soil. And that's what the planet needs. It could not sustain itself without them. So these earthworms, the red wigglers, and they have different types. There's one that's from Africa. It's a really large one, and pink. Somehow got around the globe. People brought it with them under their shoe soles. I think that's what happened. So, and and they are absolutely vitally important for planet Earth. So the most vitally important bioorganisms here on Earth, more important than anything larger even. So because they're the ones that recycle all the debris, and without that would not be possible. Okay, without that it would perish in mold, and I don't know what would happen. A different life form would come out, a mold-based type of life form maybe. I don't know. But these sprouting plants and all of that depends on the earthworms to recycle debris into rich, fertile earth soil, so that all of the sprouting plants, all of the plants that shoot up, get a root and come out towards the sun and have photosynthesis, they depend on this composting system. It's very, very important. You don't hear that from anyone else because most people are somehow financially tethered to the old structure, and because of that they don't want to make changes. But these changes are vitally, vitally important for the survival of this planet. So I think I basically covered the most important things here. I just more or less touched on these subjects. I can go deeper into these subjects, but I think the most important, education, nurturing a child, composting, these are vitally important for survival here on Earth. So, peace and love for all living beings, equally much.